Our gospel reading is Matthew 24, 36 through 44. A surprising place to pick up the scriptures, especially the gospel scriptures, in the start of our season of Advent. But it reminds us of this kingship, that Christ is the one we're waiting for. Christ is coming again. Advent doesn't just touch on the advent of the manger, but that Christ comes to the manger, and 2 Sundays we talk about Christ coming in final glory, and then, of course, Christ coming into our hearts. Here we are in Matthew 24, 36 through 44. I invite you to follow along as you hear this. Jesus is speaking to his disciples. But the exact day and hour, no one knows that, not even heaven's angels, not even the Son. Only the Father knows. The arrival of the Son of Man will take place in times like Noah's. Before the great flood, everyone was carrying on as usual, having a good time, right up to the day Noah boarded the ark. They knew nothing until the flood hit and swept everything away. The Son of Man's arrival will be like that. 2 men will be working in the field, one will be taken, one left behind. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, one left behind. So stay awake, be alert. You have no idea what day your master will show up, but you do know this. You know that if the homeowner had known what time of night the burglar would arrive, he would have been there with his dogs to prevent the break-in. Be vigilant, just like that. You have no idea when the Son of Man is going to show up. This is probably too much information or boring information. Each sermon is about a 3-week process. The first week, you're just kind of gathering information. You're just kind of putting some ideas in your head. Because, like I said, if there's 3 weeks, that means you're kind of juggling 3 sermons at a time. And then the second week, you're starting to form outline. You're starting to put some real ideas together and create that outline by the end of the second week. And then what I do the last week is really just pour into that top one. Like I said, I may give the one I'm 3 weeks away on 5. Well, not 5. I'd probably get it a half hour. Time. The one that's in the middle, that's usually got about 5 to 10 hours of work. And about 1 hour per minute is what you're pouring into on this week. And boy, I was going all over for this Advent. I had so many ideas, and then I stumbled across in some of my readings this beautiful concept of the undomesticated God. That's what I'm talking about this whole 4 seasons. The undomesticated God. That's such a wonderful word to me. So I looked it up. I love words. Untamed. Not being caged in. Undomesticated. Wild. That God does God's thing, and God will do God's thing. When God says to Moses, that's what I'm after. When God says to Moses, hey, when you go back to Egypt and you're wondering which God sent you, that's your question, because Moses asked. When I get to Egypt, they're going to ask what God. And what am I going to tell them? And God has this beautiful answer. I am who I am. Tell them I am sent you. Well, in Hebrew, because of the way tenses work, the exact way you write I am who I am, you can write I will be who I will be. That's wonderful. Only in the context of how you're speaking can you understand how that's understood. If you just see those words, you don't know it's I am, and it's I will be, I will be. And so in this Advent, as we get ready, God is undomesticated. You can't, I'm going to be who I'm going to be, God says. And that's why I've called you to follow me. Because you don't know which way I'm turning. I know which way things need to go. And my purposes will not be thwarted. Things may come along that'll throw you a curve, but it won't overcome me. And I will not design things just so you get stuck. I'm not going to design things just so you can be tested. See how you take that. You know, some people just have a great sense of timing. I wish I was that quick-witted. Early in my ministry, in my late 20s, when I was really, God, I can't believe how young I was when I started this. What was God thinking? I still wonder what God's thinking sometimes, having me as a pastor. But early, I was 27, 28, and I was in the hospice. The top floor of the United Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis, it's kind of the Mayo of the area. It's a wonderful, amazing hospital. The top floor is a hospice. You don't walk out of that floor. And I was there visiting a parishioner, an elderly parishioner, gentleman in his 80s, late 80s, and within the last 18 months had lost the farm, because it was the end of the farm crisis, but things were still tough, had lost his wife, and now had a disease that was going to kill him. He's not going to walk out of there. And what do you say to people who have walked that journey as their pastor, especially as a young pastor? And so I was just having the ministry of presence, just being there. Just let them know I'm here for you. I'm praying for you. I represent the congregation and their love for you, and that God is in our midst. And he's pretty quiet, and finally he looks away from the window and he looks over to me, and he says, "You know, Pastor Jim, I know that God's not going to give me any more than I can handle." I kind of nodded. He said, "I just wish God didn't think so highly of me." What a beautiful, may I have such grace. May I have such grace and such wisdom. He smiled wryly, and we talked a bit more. But obviously, I've never forgotten that moment, because it spoke to me, God will be God, and God has me in God's hands. And as God goes, I will go, and I'm okay with that. I'm coming to terms, or have come to terms with that. This is Advent season. It's time to prepare. Now, I know there was a very important game down in Minneapolis yesterday, and it was heartbreaking that it didn't fall our way. But, and understand where I grew up and where all my other siblings got to go to college, then we moved to Illinois, so I got to go to Illinois State. But all my older siblings got to go to Ohio State. Yesterday, there was another big game happening. And whether that team won or lost, and they won by a landslide, and that's 8 in a row, but no one's counting. These weeks, I would love for you to have talked to the coaches and the players for the Wisconsin, the Minnesota, and the Ohio State team. We can't say the other M word where we grew up. We just talked about that school up north. But all those teams and all those coaches were preparing this week like none other. I promise you. In fact, if you go in the Ohio State locker room today, the game was yesterday, so there's a sign up that says 364 more days till we play Michigan. Honest to goodness. Honest to goodness. There's a countdown clock to that game in the Ohio State locker room. It just consistently goes. I'm sure there are traditions in the other 3 schools. Same way. But this week is the week they prepare. They get ready because it's coming. It's coming. And that's what Advent is for us. We need to prepare. We need to begin the process. I love the imagery of bending spear and shield, and sword into plow, right? To go from these instruments of anger, these instruments of destruction and death, into those things that grow and bring harvest and life from the foods. That's a beautiful imagery. And maybe that's what we need to be doing. I would, in fact, go a little further than maybe. That is the process. We need to be moving from those things in our lives which are destructive to ourselves and to others, and we all got them. We just got them. You can't get through life without them. But we can surely be working to move away from them and to take some of the resources, our attitude, move from anger to forgiveness. Our time, from energies that serve self to energy that serves God. That's the kind of change we're talking about. Now, the good news is, I have a nephew who is went to school for it. Who knew they had schools for this? He's a blacksmith. And a couple of years ago, he moved. And hey, Uncle Jim, could you help me? I was visiting my sister. Could you help me move my forge and all my equipment from the barn to my new shop? I was glad to do so, but I encouraged him, after moving anvils and forges and ingots of steel. They're only this big. Honestly, goodness, they're only this big, but they're widow makers. I tell you, you can't carry two of them. They're just so condensed. And we loaded 8 of those. Anyway, after we were all done, I said, have you ever thought of taking up crochet? Next time you want to move, I hope you're doing crochet. But watching him do his thing is beautiful, to hear that imagery in the Bible. Beat and shape and forge and mold. You know, you stick in the furnace, or you do this, depending on what your forge is like, and that gets the heat going, and the draft comes through, and it gets that metal red to white hot. And then you bring it over here, and you bend it and bang it on the anvil to shape it just right. Boy, I wish I had some of his pictures. He does amazing work. Amazing work. What a chance to be thinking about what we're doing. We need the heat of the Holy Spirit. We need that draft of the wind of the Spirit blowing amongst the coals of our faith, so that we can generate what it takes to be shaped. We got to get in that moldable, that malleable moment, so that God can shape us, so that God can begin to do it. But you know, God doesn't say, and then I'm going to pound you into plowshares. That doesn't sound like I want that. God says, I want you to take what I've given you and stop using it for this and start using it for this. And even his easy projects can't be done like that. It's a process. So why should we think differently about the Advent change? You know, it's no wonder we miss Jesus. We miss this on Advent, because the Christ shows up as Jesus. And we've got all sorts of expectations on Jesus, and Jesus always confounds them, right? Jesus, if you were really Jesus, we just heard it last week from the criminal on the cross next to Christ. Hey, if you're the Messiah, save me. How's that sound for just the start? Save yourself, and while you're at it, save me. Not what I expected in the Messiah. This is not how I thought the story was going to end. Just ask Judas about that. He was done. This is going nowhere. 3 years? 3 years I've given my life to this, and this is how it plays out? Well, I'm going to get what I can out of this, and then I'm on my way. Wow. How successful did Jesus seem while he hung on the cross? But that moment split all of time in two. before and after. This is the season. This is the season for us to begin the work. We're not going to get it done by the end of today. In fact, we're going to have to work at it to make sure we get it done by Christmas. Because so many Christmases have gone by in our lives, and how have we really changed? I'm not pointing my finger so much as you as at myself, you know. I said last week when Papa, Dad's dad, I said when you point a finger, remember you're pointing 3 back at yourself. So whenever I get pointy like that in a sermon, remember I know where 3 of those fingers, 3 out of 4 are pointing. How many? So I'm asking us, let this undomesticated God, this God who won't be tamed, this God who can't be chained or tamed, let God do God's work in you this season. Get out of God's way. Start filling in the valleys. Start bringing down the barriers. You know, it's not that the valleys are low and the mountains are high, and so we're going to make the mountains valleys, and we're going to make the valleys mountains. No. All it says is we're going to take the valleys, we're going to fill them in. And every mountain will be made low. Well, look, we've got a nice even plain. And all the rough places will be smoothed out, right? And all the crooked ways where you get lost, they're going to be made straight. All we're doing is getting ready for God to come and making a way. Now, in the weeks to come, we'll talk about that. God says, make a way in the desert, in the wilderness. Well, that's a whole new sermon. Let's just begin making ourselves malleable, making ourselves mendable. And then we can do the hard work of shaping our time, our resources, our attitude, our hearts to be ready for what we know is coming. We know that day.